you're training some of these weapons, kung fu. Have you noticed certain applications to lower stances that maybe in a bare hands context wouldn't have made sense?
With the weapons that apply, with the weapons that don't apply without?
Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously things that I'm more looking for the things that do apply with the weapon. You obviously do go into wider stances sometimes with the weapon if it's a much longer weapon to kind of base out the length of the weapon. One thing I did notice with using the longer weapons, my body has to be more balanced in general, which is a really nice skill because the length of the weapon changes my own balance. So I'm always counterbalancing the weapon. And so like they go into like one-legged stances and all these things, but you need actual really, really good, I don't know what the word is, that like proprioception, I guess, or understanding of kind of how your balance works in that space so that the weapon doesn't control you, you control the weapon. And when you find it, there's this really nice thing that happens where the weapon kind of leads the movement, but your body feels completely balanced the whole time. So it's almost like the weapon has a language of its own, and you're allowing yourself to discover it as you move the weapon around. And when you do that, you then drop the weapon, you find that your hands can have kind of a language too, right? So, and there is language in fighting, but it's sometimes we're all speaking the same language, like I said before, meaning we're speaking A, B, C, or hello, how are you, whatever that is, right? And so if I can come at you and speak another language, you're not going to understand it at all. And so even in the Filipino martial arts, all these kind of movements that we do with blades, right? Everything here. And you see the Indonesian martial arts where we're doing all this kind of stuff. What's the value of it all? These are tremendously effective kind of ways to move your body that are different, that have application that wouldn't be obvious. And a lot of weapons training teaches you that. If you're fighting and you have to dodge a knife and you don't have a margin of error, you will be naturally more effective at dodging a punch.
What prompted this question, and I'm going to look for more footage, but I found some World War II type army training stuff where they were training, okay, how do you dodge a bayonet? How do you dodge a knife? And basically, margin of error, you got to be careful, right? So, like, you got to be almost overly careful when you're dodging knives. So some of their drills, it's like, okay, this person lunges at you with a knife. Don't try to slip it like you're slipping a punch because your margin of error, Instead, their movements are more exaggerated. And I was like, oh, that like hit this like little light bulb in my head. I'm like, that could be why. Again, I'm totally extrapolating, but maybe some of these kung fu forms, why are the movements exaggerated? It was meant to be trained with weapons. Again, totally just a hypothesis right now.
That's actually an interesting outlook on it. You will see that people do larger escapes or evasions when it comes to your life being 100% on the line. I mean, you can't just tuck this much and hope that it just doesn't hit you. You're parrying, you're diagonally stepping, you're clearing, you're keeping the hand out the way. Like there's a lot more going on typically when you're just trying to avoid a knife or a sword versus like really, really high level guys will start optimizing movement. But I don't know, like how many people who survived on the battlefield were tight with their evasions versus just getting out the way, just get out the way. So it changes the way you think about fighting for sure. Even when I teach self-defense, I teach the rhino position a lot, right? Like this position, but there's also the spear position. And if you think about it, this position does not help me as much with weapons. Sure, I can get past the knife arm and it might be behind my neck. This is way safer here where I'm keeping the arm away from me. And so the question is, when someone does this in a street situation, in a real life situation, are you going to be fast enough to be able to read if it's a knife, a beer bottle, just their hand? Because you don't want to have to start figuring out what the best course of action is. If I just know I'm doing this and just keeping it away and hiding behind my shoulder so my carotid artery is safe, I'm hugging my head on this side so if something comes here, that's kind of like an immediate reaction of, oh shit, whatever it is, it's not touching me. If I stay tight like a boxer and my reaction is to go here, and that's a knife, that's still coming right through my carotid. If that's a beer bottle, that's still breaking over my head and cutting me up, maybe knocking me out, maybe slicing my whole face open. So I like single kind of functional responses under stress. I don't want to have to figure out what's going on. I want just one answer. And if this answer keeps away the knife, it keeps away the beer bottle, it keeps away the punch, then that's the one I'm going to go with in my training.
Yeah. Even in weapons, for example, one of the things, it's a big debate. I'm sure you talk to HEMA people, you talk to these people, they'll debate you endlessly. But one of the arguments is the same thing. If I have a weapon that only has one function, stab, in some stress situations, it's better than a weapon that can slash and stab, or a weapon like some of those Chinese weapons, they have like 4 different ways of attacking. It's like, ooh, are you going to be able to pull that off under pressure?
Yeah. So for me, complexity is not good. Complexity is a negative. If you look at the thing I'm probably most scared of in a knife attack is listen, if someone's just doing this with a knife and waving it in front of me, right, and non-committal, I'm going to back off and I'm going to run away because non-committal quick strikes are not what's coming at me fast. This is someone who's trained, who thinks I might have a knife too, who's trying to cut my hand when I move close. And when I overcommit, he's going to stab me. But until then, he's just giving me death by 1,000 cuts. I'm really scared of the guy in the street who just grabs my shirt and just starts repeatedly doing this like a maniac, because it's so crazy and hard to deal with. And there's so much aggression. But what is that? That's a singular line attack with one method, meaning a stab. So it's a stab from one line of attack. It's just repeated and it's aggressive, and the weapon is so scary that it makes it really hard to deal with. So yeah, you give someone an ice pick, it's the same thing as giving them a knife in that situation. You give them whatever it is. Now, you have a benefit, obviously, when you have a weapon that can slash, because as I block and you retract, you're still going to be cutting me. Meaning if you're trying to stab me in the neck and you miss and hit my back and pull, you're going to be slicing my back. I can't grab it. If it's an ice pick, maybe I can grab the ice pick. So the weapon itself makes a difference. And a bladed weapon that has edges is more effective than one that is just a straight stabbing weapon in almost every situation. But the mentality of just using it for stabbing in high stress, I just gave an example. That's what I'm more scared of. The guy who's slashing me isn't going to kill me. The guy who's aggressively stabbing my neck will.
I think about the ancient Roman legions, right? They had that gladius sword. It was only a thrusting weapon. It was not a slashing weapon. But those Roman legions for a while were very effective. You know, if you wanted to go hand to hand with their columns, you're probably going to lose out.
You couldn't. Didn't the gladiators like hide behind shields and then just stab the sword through it when you couldn't? So they were pretty much like an unbeatable wall. And they would just move forward, stab, block, move forward.
Stab,
block. It's such a straightforward way to fighting. And again, like I said, I prefer systems and philosophies under stress that simplify. They don't make things more complex. Fighting's already stressful, right? No matter how good you are. Fighting in the street is even more stressful no matter how good you are. I still get stressed out when I spar sometimes. If I have to go with a guy who I know is tough and a little bit aggressive, I'm like, am I really doing this today? Like part of my body and soul, it's like, oh man, this is not going to be fun. It's going to hurt. And then you take them, you amplify it by 1,000,000 when it's on the street and it's 2 people and you don't know what they're carrying and you didn't prepare mentally for the situation. So nobody wants to be in a situation, unless they're actually a psychopath, where they're being randomly attacked. So just simplify everything for yourself so you can get home at the end of the day and just, keep it easy.
Yeah. Obviously, you are mostly in Florida, although you're traveling now. Do you get into crazy situations in Florida, or is it pretty tame where you are?
Well, there's obviously lunatics everywhere. I try and avoid lunatics. I'm not the type of guy who goes to bars or clubs. So that's a huge area where fights happen that is not a part of my life. The areas where things have escalated for me personally, oddly enough, like even if you watch the one when I was in Portugal, the fight I got into, a lot of the time it's like with my dog, like someone off-leash dog runs over and I get worried that they're like, that was one situation. Or it's someone who, like, I'm parking in a spot and there's people in Florida who I don't know what's going on in their head, and they'll literally just like come around me as I'm trying to park and just like cut my car off and try and take it. And I'm like, this person is a lunatic. And part of me is like, well, what do I do in this situation? Do I like, I want to hurt them because I think they deserve it. They just very obvious, and they'll just give you the finger. They don't care. Like there's rude people everywhere do crazy things. People try and slam you off the road out of nowhere for no reason. You know what I mean? Like road rage, that type of thing. Those are situations where I'm like, oh, would really love to do something. But the problem in Florida is I carry. So I always have a weapon on me. I assume that other people are carrying. And so I know that if I escalate, I'm escalating a situation where my weapon is in play. And I avoid it at all costs, because the last thing I want to do is escalate to a situation where a firearm is something that's a go-to. So I avoid escalation like the plague. I get my ego out of it. And it's weird because, you know, people think guns will bring more violence or death to society, but I actually am making the argument for the opposite. The fact that I have it, I know that it's there, and I know that I don't want to end up in a confrontation with someone on either side where there's a gun in play. Just don't want to. So every escalation to me is in my head, okay, this is potentially life or death. And the truth is, every escalation in the street should be perceived that way, because you never know what the other guy is willing to do. You just have no idea. You get in an argument with someone in their car. You don't know if that's the day that they got divorced from their wife and they lost custody of their kids. They lost their money and they're just miserable and they don't care about themselves anymore. And they're willing to do something terrible. You don't know. You don't know who you're picking a fight with and on what day and what's going on in their mind. And you don't know their background. You don't know if they have the same kind of agreement of violence that you do. So yeah, but it can happen anywhere. You know, in Toronto, people assume there are no weapons in play, which is probably even more dangerous because people can be incredibly rude here out of nowhere. And I know Canadians are, you know, have a reputation of being nice, but the drivers here have not been nice. I'm a very good driver. I mean, even my girlfriend, she's driving. She's like, "What is wrong with the drivers? They're just so like they don't want to let you in." Like just weird stuff. And even on my parents' street, like I'm backing out and it's a 15-mile-an-hour school zone street, and there'll be cars that go like 70 miles an hour and then honk at you when you're getting out of and there's no way you can even see them because they're invisible until they're ripping down the street, and they'll honk at you and start fights. There's this guy, Chase. I was like, fuck it. I'm just chased the guy for like 10 minutes and he got so scared of me. I was wearing a tank top. I was like, I got shaved head. I'm just all angry, chasing him, yelling at him. So, yeah, I don't know. I try and avoid these fights, but sometimes they come out of me.
One of the things that resonates with what you said is that in a lot of ancient societies, East Asian societies, people carried swords.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why? Well, obviously for safety, but also it's that reminder that, okay, if you do decide to get into a confrontation, this thing that I'm carrying could come to play. And so in a very interesting way, it actually prevents certain unnecessary violence during encounters.
Well, I mean, if you're walking down the street and there's two people and you see one who has a sword on him and one doesn't, who are you picking the fight with?
Yeah,
you're not picking the fight with the guy who has a sword. So if both of you have swords, probably both of you are not picking a fight with each other.
Yeah.
So if everyone has a sword, it's probably less likely that people want to. It's like the old Westerns where people agree to like a duel, but like it was a huge deal. They're like, all right, we're going to settle this, but pretty much agreeing that like one of us is probably going to die at the end of this, even though those guns back then were highly, highly inaccurate and they would miss most of the time. But you were still making a gentleman's agreement to end someone's life. I feel like people are confused over the reality of street confrontations and how little it takes. You fall, you get hit in the face, you fall and hit your head on the concrete. That's the end of your life. Or like I said, you get the wrong guy on the wrong day. That's the end of your life. Or you get someone who just has a knife and decides to stab you. That's the end of your life. So why are you even risking it? What's the benefit? Your ego. And even if you win, what is it giving you? It's not giving you anything. That guy's just going to hate you for the rest of his life. And you better hope you don't live in the same neighborhood, because he might get revenge one day, just sneak up on you. I've talked about that before. I think that there's a huge misunderstanding about the reality of violence. I love competitive fighting. I love sparring. It's probably my favorite thing in the world to do. It's the only time I feel present. It's like all my problems go away, but I don't confuse that what's happening in the gym with what happens in the street. They're
Yeah.
two different worlds for me. And the outcome of the gym is like kind of joy, even if there's injuries. I've been injured a million times, but it's consensual, right? And there's an understanding that that can happen, and we're not there to do that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't have anything to prove to anybody when it comes to street violence.
I have to, again, give Ilan credit for two things you taught me. One thing is, again, I will never forget this, your cell phone case, right? Sometimes if you need a makeshift weapon, we all carry around a cell phone. And our cell phone case, most of the time, if it can just survive a fall from 6 foot, you can use it in an emergency situation to smack someone. And like, ever since Ilan told me that in 2019, I've remembered that. So don't just pretend to be on your phone and hope the threat goes away. Use this if needed in emergencies. That's one thing I'm going to give Ilan credit to. The second thing is, when I was in Florida this year, I texted Ilan because one of my Uber drivers used to be a bouncer. And as a bouncer in Florida, he saw people die falling on the pavement in a fight, get punched, hit your head on the pavement, die. And Ilan told me, yeah, it doesn't take too much. You gave me a number, like how many, it only takes
2 feet.
this many. Yeah.
2 feet.
Yeah. And again, so I learned that from Ilan, and it's just, we always hear, oh yeah, but if it were on the street, blah, blah, and then it's been said so much that it's almost like the boy who cried wolf, right? Now people almost dismiss it. They almost think, oh, you're just saying it to appear tough or whatever. But it's like, the reality of things is that pavement is hard, and your skull, it's thick, but it's not as thick as you think. And if you give it enough distance,
game over, unfortunately. And everything is a weapon. That's what people don't realize. I think, one of the downfalls sometimes of combat sports is you get so used to using your hands and your legs, or just grappling, whatever it may be, that you forget that there's a chair right beside you, or a cup, or a pool stick, whatever that thing may be. The guy who's picking that up has a huge advantage. Situational training and like pre-fight engagement is probably the most overlooked part of fighting. Fighting in real life survival situations, fights or self-defense situations are won or lost before things even start, to a 95% degree. The rest is 5%. Do you know how to cover up your head? Were your hands up? But like, it all comes out to, you can't win. If I'm over here with my hands down like this and my chin up, and you're starting to fight with me, and I'm still, no matter how good a fighter I am, if I'm just talking crap over here back, you can sucker punch me. I cannot get my hands up in time. I don't care if you're John Jones. You cannot get your hand. Now look, John Jones will eat it or move a certain way and roll with it and kill you, but he's John Jones. But he's still at a disadvantage for that 1 second versus John Jones, who would be right here. And I don't believe John Jones would let someone get that close to him aggressively without his hands being up. So, yeah, most fights, I had someone tell me, who in Portugal, actually, a really good boxer, told me, and he was very good at self-defense, but he's like, I would never teach somebody self-defense because there is no answer to self-defense because the variables are infinite. And he's like, so how can you ask me to answer a question where there are infinite variables? There are infinite answers, so I can't answer the question. So how can I really teach it and provide you an answer? He goes, so everything that we do in self-defense is statistics. It's methods to help you answer more questions, but you'll never answer all of them. And so people have to start looking at self-defense like that, I think. I think that's just more of an honest way to look at it. And, even if a student asks me, like, oh, do you think you could lose a street fight? I'm like, anyone could catch me, or I could trip, and the best MMA fighter in the world could be fighting and lose. They could just get caught, or they could step wrong on the concrete and it's a little bit of a lower level and their ACL tears and they're on the ground and then the guy stomps them in the head. Like, anything can actually happen. And there's no ref there to break it up or be like, oh no, you got hit unfairly in the eyeball. So sorry about that. The ring doorbell, as usual, is making its noise.
Nice. That's how I hurt my ankle. I was just running one day. I didn't see a pothole and I stepped and fell over it. And I'm still dealing with a sprain. It's been a year, but ankle sprains, especially if you sprained your ankle in 3 different areas, it's going to take a while. So that was one of those moments. It's like a self-defense lesson that I learned, not from fighting, just from being clumsy and running and assuming the streets are are very good when, you know, infrastructure's falling apart everywhere in America. But like, that's an example. Like, imagine if I were in a fight and I stepped as I'm spraining my ankle. Now I can't fight and I'm getting stomped. Oh my God.
But that happens.
Yeah.
That happens. People will go into a fight, do everything right, and they have like an injury that was just ready to go, or they have like, or just a run of bad luck, and they, you know, they stepped in a puddle and their foot slipped and then they landed on the ground and now the guy's smashing them in the head. Like, things happen that are out of your control. Even if you do everything right, even if you're very well trained, variables, like I said, there's an infinite number of variables, so you cannot account for them.
Yeah. I told this story, and in fact, it was in a video of mine that I did that YouTube took down, because the sparring I was covering, it was sort of on a field and it looked sort of like a street fight, even though they were covered up. They had the equipment and everything, but YouTube was like, oh, it looks too much like a street fight. But anyways, in that video, I told a story because it happened during the sparring session. There was a little bush that one of the guys didn't see, and he backed up into it. And I told the story in middle school, and I was the Kung Fu kid. So all the time, I you know, my friends, my classmates would test me. One time, we were in the neighborhood and there was a tree with a branch that was like my head level that I didn't see. So he's backing me up, but I'm throwing these spinning back fists. I'm looking like such a cool dude. And then I back up and I hit the branch of the tree. I'm like, oh, wait, just a second. Like, a guy that was throwing spinning back fists still didn't see the branch of the tree, because again, his focus, he's laser focused on the guy in front, and boom, he heard it. Like, I was like, oh, and he didn't even keep attacking. He's like, oh dear, I heard that.
Well, you're lucky you didn't keep attacking. That's the whole point.
Yeah,
crazy.
Exactly.
There's just, again, it's like you could do everything right and still have the wrong outcome, which is scary. A lot of people don't like hearing that. A lot of people want to feel like they could have a guarantee, but that's just not how life works. So like I said, that's why I try and avoid all these situations. I'm not interested in trying to risk anything for zero gain.
Yeah. One last story I'll tell you. Just 2 days ago, my neighborhood, last time there was probably someone sketchy was like 20 years ago. So I was walking by the library. Now, of course, it's the library, so the library is going to attract a little bit more diverse people. But there was a person not in the library, but on one of the neighborhood streets next to the library, and you could tell he was on something. He was just, you know, like that. And then I could have easily been like, I don't care, I'll just walk that way anyways. I'm like, no. And then I just made a turn and walked another direction, still getting to my place, but just taking a different street. Like, that's a perfect example. Like, why is it? It's just like, it didn't even shorten or lengthen my walk. It just changed my walk. So why not avoid the person? Who knows what he's on, you know?
But that's actually self-defense. Yeah. That's actually self-defense. A lot of people don't realize that. You know, a lot of people think it's the fight that's self-defense. No, it's if you did something that avoided the fight. No one ever sees the outcome of the other route you might have taken. Yeah. So they don't see the benefit of what you did, but there's a massive benefit to getting home safe. Every day you get home safe where there was a potential threat means you avoided said potential threat. That's it. End of story.
Yeah.
Every time someone cuts you off in the street, or you accidentally cut them off, let's say, because that can piss people off like crazy. We all make mistakes. Sometimes we don't see someone, we merge. I have a huge rule. When I'm wrong and I do that, I will make sure I make it clear to the person, I know I fucked up and I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. I'll roll down the window. I'll put out my hand. They'll come beside me if they're still angry and they're yelling. I go, hey, I totally get it. I'm really sorry I was in the wrong. I apologize. I just really didn't see you. It's my bad. I apologize. And I let them go. Every time that's happened, no matter how angry the person was pulling up beside me, every single time they're like, bro, don't worry about it. They shift 180. There has never been a time where I'm very apologetic to someone road raging but that's self-defense. De-escalation is self-defense. Right? So, you know, like if you're not aware of that and you're not training that to some extent, and a situation escalates that results in violence, you failed the very first part, which was don't let it get. Now, you don't always have that option. Sometimes someone just wants to hurt you. They break into your house, whatever that thing may be. De-escalation is not part of it. But a lot of situations, de-escalation is part of it. So you need to understand that as part of your training.
This conversation, I'm probably going to put it on Fight Commentary Chats. This little segment was awesome. Like, it's just awesome talking. I know, because that time we met in 2019, right? We just talked I knew we could talk for hours. So yeah, let's bring you on more. And whenever there's a topic, we can just talk. And then I'll use that first segment in whatever video. And then like whatever topics we want to talk about next, I can use it in future videos, or I can put it on other channels. I think this is great.
Amazing. Yeah, I had a really good time.